But for now, let's just continue with the rest of the covenants as we follow the framework of God's provision throughout history. Abraham was promised a nation, a great nation, exceedingly fruitful, and kings shall come from you. And also there's the promise there of taking over the land of Canaan. And if you've watched my previous videos on the land of Canaan, you will see that that was quite an involved process to actually take over that land. Now, between taking over the promised land, there was a situation of enslavement for the house of Israel. As we see here in Genesis 15, God actually says to Abraham that, "No, for a certain 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated, but I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions, great reward. In the fourth generation of your descendants will come back here." And where is here that he's talking about? Abraham was in the land of Canaan already before the enslavement of Israel. Also notice the ending of what God's saying. He's saying, "For the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached full measure." So that's a significant point right there, that God is showing that even though the Amorites were a mixed bag of giants and wicked people, he waited until that whole area had become so bad. Now that's an important thing to notify there, that God, it is true when he says that he is slow to anger. This is the exact example of him being, or demonstrating to Abraham that he is slow to anger. But it also brings the question, why would God send the house of Israel into slavery and keep him in slavery until the time of the Amorites had reached full measure? Why is that? Well, the Bible doesn't give an answer for why this is, so anyone could speculate. If I was to give an opinion, I would say it's very similar to the reasons why giants survived after the flood, and the answer could be the same answer that I gave in the previous video, that he wants us in a position where we truly appreciate the work or the blessing that he is providing, and that it's not to be taken lightly. And maybe he just wants us to glorify his name and honour him for who he really is. Also, it may not have been God's intention. It may be a consequence of sin, because we see in this situation here that Joseph's brothers sold him as a slave to the traders, which were Ishmaelites, and he went to Egypt. Now, of course, God was with Joseph the whole time and blessed him, so he wasn't really a slave, he was more of a master. But this is what eventuated to the whole house of Israel being attracted to Egypt, is because Joseph became wealthy, and the land of Canaan was receiving a great famine, a great drought at the time. Now this drought is obviously God's work, but the question is it punishment for what they are doing, what they did to Joseph? Or is it God's intentions from the beginning, and He is luring the Israelites into the slavery for His own purpose? We don't know. So we see now that when the Israelites followed Jacob into the land of Egypt, Joseph forgave them and embraced the Israelites, and the whole Israelite nation began to multiply in the land of Egypt, because Egypt was considered a good farming land. However, as time progressed, and some believe it occurred over 35 years, that the Egyptian kings of the time saw the Israelite nation as becoming a threat. And it says here, come, let us deal with them, set taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. Now, this is very similar to today's working environment. We are seeing heavy burdens from tax and also work hours, increased time, working on the weekends, etc.